Everyone, we are recording now, and we are welcoming the inspection ladies to our Lunch and Learn series today. So with no further ado, here we go.
Here we go. All right. Hi. How are y'all? They know me.
Yeah.
We're going to discount them.
Blame her.
We're good. Those of y'all that don't know me, I am Amy with the Inspection Ladies. I am the inspector part of the Inspection Ladies. Tanya hiding back there on the couch. She is the one that most everybody talks to. Like, so when y'all talk to her, y'all call in, I let my phone roll to her, y'all schedule everything, she does it all. And I show up. So coming in today, we were invited in and they wanted us to come in and just give a quick presentation. And for newer agents, I like to run through this presentation to kind of give everybody an idea of kind of what to look for when you're showing houses, right? If you're out there with some of your buyers and you know their price points, you know how much money they have to spend, you know if it's a young couple that has barely getting into this house and not going to have a lot for repairs, you know, whatever the case may be. So if you look at a few things when you're showing it, it can kind of help cut down on that. You know, you're automatically going to know, hey, Amy's going to point that out on an inspection or this or that. So there you go. Next, hi, you guys. I see y'all out there. Hi, Nina. So kind of what y'all look for when you're out showing houses. Y'all, you know, you see the overall condition of the house and how many people go in there and they complain about the paint, right? And that drives you nuts because you're like, you know, go buy a can of paint, right? Like, fix it. You see the roof condition, right? That's one of the first things that realtors notice because I'll show up and a lot of times they'll say, we've already got the roof on the way. I'm like, awesome, but what about this, this, and this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So foundation, you'll sometimes take a quick peek at that, but we'll go through and show you a few things. How many go look at the electric panel, right? Like how many people actually go and open the panel and say, oh, let's run, right?
I go look at the air conditioners now.
Oh,
Yeah.
so-
Yeah. I can see Brian doing the electrical panel. I
Yeah,
can
so
totally see
these
you doing
two,
that.
these two now go look at the HVAC and the exterior. So next slide, next, see, clicker. So on the foundation, a lot of what you're looking at, if you see large trees coming out from under the house, it's not a good thing, right? Like, let's go, either they're going to cut it down, tree service to remove it, or you're going to have existing foundation problems. Cracks, you know, minor cracks and minor settlement cracks aren't that big, right? It's not that big a deal. It's when you start seeing them widen and you're getting wider than a 1/4 inch, or you have displacement of bricks, right? When the bricks start displacing. So when you're looking at all that, or horizontal, if you have a line that goes through the foundation, that's kind of a big issue, right? When we're next slide.
Mm-hmm.
I thought this is one of my favorite houses I've ever done, right? So if you look at this house, it's beautiful, right? And they did this nice, beautiful add-on over the garage and everything else. And I got there and they're like, hey, repairs have been made. So they had every bit of the foundation work. They'd gone in and added all these piers under this house. And I was like, okay, that's awesome. And then you start looking at it and you can see on some of these, I'm pointing, I know some of y'all can't see it, but up on that top left picture there, you can see where they did a bunch of patching the cracks, right? And so they patched them all up and that was great. The bottom left picture is an existing patch that they did. The middle picture on the bottom is a brand new crack that had come after they did the foundation work. So we still had other issues going on. With this one, I started looking at it. It's a single-story house, right? And it's a mid-90s, I believe. So when you pour a foundation on a house, there's footing depths, right? And they do 2 stories have a little bit different footing depth than a single story does. So when people go and add second-story additions on a house, you don't know if it can take the weight, right? So they had ripped out the garage walls and had reinforced the studs, but we were having other issues with the back part of the house.
Okay.
So how do they remedy that? Like, if you know that it can't, you still just go under there and put more piers?
Yeah, they had piered everywhere around this house. I don't call out structural engineers all that much, but you know, the sellers were adamant. We've had the foundation work, we've had it done. And I'm like, that's awesome, but you're still having cracks that are continuing to pop up. So, pop up. I'm like, so whatever was done is not adequate, right at that point. So at that point, I'm like, instead of just the foundation company coming in and going, oh, you got a little bit of movement. Let's just, the house is doing this. Let's put some more piers to support this. Have an engineer come in to tell you exactly what else you're going to need. So on this occasion here, they did walk away from that because the sellers were unwilling. They said we had the foundation done. and that was it, right? We're not doing
Can I
that.
ask, okay, so I'm assuming that you said that it appears everywhere. I'm assuming they put piers along the outside because that's where foundation companies find it
Yes.
easy to do. Did they actually go into the center of the house and put piers there on the
That I
interior
don't know.
gables? Okay, didn't know if you knew that or
No, no,
not.
no,
Okay,
yeah, because I didn't, I mean, the flooring in it didn't look all that new, so I
Okay.
would say probably not.
okay,
I just knew that based on this and them telling me that, hey, I never saw the foundation report. I just know that they said, hey, there has been foundation work done.
Okay.
And then based on all the cracking, but when I come along and even some of the existing patches they had made on the cracking, we're opening back up.
Mm.
And then we've got new cracking to go on top of that. And that was less than a year ago. We still got,
you
know,
got something moving.
yeah, we still have a lot of movement on it. So, HVACs, that's another one I like to tell you guys about. These two now.
Oh my God, I know what I'm talking about.
Like
now.
Tasha's so excited.
Oh my God. no.
No. So, on the outside of the house, the condensing units on the outside of the house, what I tell a lot of people is sometimes go and pop your head and look for the label that's on it, right? Because that'll show you what type of Freon's in it. As we all know, well, as you don't know, Freon is banned, right? So it's at this point on older houses, if you've got an older unit that's got the R22 Freon or the HCFC Freon 22, if you see that anywhere on that label, that's kind of a red flag. Now, a lot of times I go in, they're running great. That is the coldest Freon you can get, and that unit's running awesome. I don't have any deficiencies with that system, and you may not. But again, this comes back to, your buyers. Is it a young couple that can't afford to replace a unit in a year, and big money unit? Because at the time it goes down, it's almost always cheaper to replace it than find the Freon to fix it.
Mhm.
So if you see the green R410, you're usually good on that. Those units, 410 they're phasing it down as of January of this year. So it's banned too at this point.
Really?
Yeah.
I wasn't aware
Yeah,
of
they're
that.
doing phase down. So they are no longer building units with 410 on them. Don't even ask me what the new stuff is. How is that going to affect anybody? It's still going to be, it took them 10 years to get rid of R22, 10 years plus for it to completely be gone and obsolete. So I usually tell people, if you have an R22 now, maybe try to baby it another year or two until you can get a unit with the newer Freon. That way you've got,
Where it's more common.
yeah,
Okay.
where it's more common. Y'all have any, anybody else have any questions?
So the new bills are with the R22
No,
Oh,
that's
no.
oldest.
Yeah, the new builds are 410 right now.
or 10?
But
Yeah.
you're saying they're phasing that out even. at
They're
this point.
phasing that. So I think starting probably, there's so many millions of units out there that have 410 in them right now, but I'd say in the next year or two, you're going to start seeing some new Freon popping on the market, new units and stuff like that on some new builds.
Now, I've seen my son is working HVAC with his girlfriend's father this summer,
Yeah.
and they are putting in it looks like the ones in Mexico, where it's the unit outside is Amanda's building one that's like this big and this wide, and that's
Uh-huh.
all that's outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what the
They
Freon's
almost look
called.
like a mini split.
Look,
Yeah.
it looks like a small thing, but it's the whole house.
Yeah.
And they're much more efficient, supposedly.
Yeah.
He's trying to sell them, and they're like $15,000. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not paying $15,000. My work's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it
So-
makes
That's what I'm
you
saying.
too.
That's the
Yeah.
newest.
That's the new thing coming
That's
out.
what I tell everybody is like, if your buyers come up, if they're dead set on that house and it has an R22, like I said, it doesn't mean they're bad. It just means, hey, you know what? This is a future replacement for you guys. Like, no doubt about it.
Buy home warranty.
Stress the home warranties, right? All over it. Make sure the home warranty will cover the R22 or any H system, right? Because there are some home warranty companies that the minute they find out it's R22 or over a certain age,
They're out.
they're not covering it.
I did not know.
Yes.
Great info.
Yeah, and so then they're out $20,000 for a new system. So
Always nice.
I know I see me on there. Electric panels, these are my fun ones. I was in there looking at y'all's panel a while ago. See that? So,
Probably.
so if you get into older houses, if you see anything that says Federal Pacific Electric or FPE on it, just know that I'm going to tell you to have an electrician come and look at it, right? These are usually in houses from 50s, some early 60s, and prior is when we tend to see this. The issue with these breakers, they would fail. They just wouldn't break. Right. So you've got, your stove's in there trying to choke itself and kill itself and cut itself off. And your breaker's like, hey, we're just going to stay here. And then we're just going to let it catch on fire. Right. So they were a known fire hazard. So that the company's number one's out of business. Number two, if they need any electric work done in the house, electrician's going to come in and be like, we need to upgrade the panel.
Yeah.
Right. Because we can't do that. So again, they're not deal breakers. It's just things for you to know. If you walk around and have that perfect combination of, we've got we got an R22 system. We've got an old electric panel on top of everything else that needs to be done for the house. And again, you've got the brand new 20-something buyers, 20-something-year-old buyers that are like, this is our first house, and we're gonna DIY, and we're gonna remodel. Okay. I can't afford more. Okay. I get it, right? So yeah, those are one to look for. The one in the middle here, or on the right on that slide, they're called Zenskos. They're recognizable by that little diamond shaped on the plate, or they look like a Christmas tree. All the breakers, they're blue, red, and green, kind of usually in the middle, single line. Those were known to melt.
Cisco's, okay.
Yeah, so they were.
So see, I haven't seen as many of those. I see more Federal Pacific than I see Zenskos.
Yeah, Zenskos are more. I've seen probably 4 or 5 Zenskos.
Okay, so it's rare. So it's rare.
It's rare here. Yeah.
Okay,
for
because the
sure.
Federal Pacific, a lot of those were built in, especially South Fort Worth, Benbrook.
Tons of them.
Tons of those houses over there. Fox and Jacobs used the Federal Pacifics when they were building their tract
Mhm.
homes a lot.
I've actually seen some of the old, super old, little bit tiny square Federal Pacific.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool.
So they're
Carrollton,
crazy.
if you're ever in Carrollton, you go Carrollton a lot. There are going to be a lot of Federal Pacific in those Fox and Jacobs, because they built the same 4 houses, every 4 houses in whole neighborhoods, and all of them had those Federal Pacifics.
I had a house in Carrollton and we had all the electrical replaced.
Yeah, and that's a lot. Usually you see those there on the old 2-wire systems anyway. So it's like, hey. Oh, and just another quick heads up. Well, there's another panel next, but I ran into a house the other day that they had replaced the panel box and the weather head, right, for the overhead service. 200 amp panel box in there, but I look up and you got, the wires are this thick, right? We've got good, 1/2-inch wires coming in out of the weather head. The wires coming for the street were like this thick. And I was like, y'all don't have 200 amp service. I'm like, just going to tell you that right now, right? Wire sizes do not match. So
Wow.
you're only going to get what's coming from the street, right? 'Cause
Which is
that-
gonna be less than what's going to the house.
which is
because
less.
it's-
Yeah, and the age of this house, it was probably about 100 amp service.
What if it was
60
flip-flop?
to
What if
100.
it was bigger on the street side than what was on the house? Would that be
As long as your breaker
Yeah.
can handle it, right?
Yeah, as long as the breaker box can handle it. But so chances are, if you are super, much bigger, like let's say you have a 200 amp coming in from the service, you're gonna blow your breaker box to hell.
Yeah.
If you're trying to put a 125 panel in there, right? So it's just not unheard of. Most of the time, it's that opposite way where they're upgrading the panel box and they're putting in these big, nice 150, 200 amp breaker boxes and the wiring for it. But then what's coming from the street, nobody touches and replaces. And
Would
it's
that
still
be
old
the
stuff.
utility company?
Yes, it's utility company.
So
from
how
the
would you
meter
get
to
them
the
to
street.
do that then?
Well, you call them.
I know, but I'm just saying,
Money.
will they, I mean, that's what I'm saying.
Money. Back 20 years ago, for them to pull an underground service to a house from a transformer, it was about $800. So that's 20 years ago.
So
So
it's like 8,000 now.
probably,
Like-
yeah. We said, like I said, we used to, yeah,
True.
full new service and everything else. So overhead probably a little bit cheaper, but
Yeah.
still,
I think
it's,
it's still expensive on a house that I did in Arlington, and then by the time we cut all the trees, it was pricey.
Yeah.
yeah, the full new
But I
service.
mean,
Are those the ones that have that pole on the outside and then have?
That's the weather
To the
mast.
line, to the weather mast, yeah.
So the weather mast
Yeah,
is that
that's-
part that goes up and it comes over like this, and then the wires come out of the bottom side, so that the rain doesn't get in there. That's what the weather head, that's what that's for. And then your lines come out and go to the street, and go to
And
the,
you must always, the older houses that are gonna have those little 60, 100, 125 amp services, or 60 to 100 amp anyway, most of those are these older homes that you're gonna see. I think, I'm gonna say probably early 70s, they started bumping it up and the amperage sizes and everything like that. So Usually by the 80s, early 90s, I'm starting to see more 150 to 200. It was the big grand homes at the time. By the time you hit the 90s, it was the huge houses that were getting 200 amp services, little tract homes. They'd still be 150.
Mhm.
Now
In the
at
closet.
200. Yeah, and in the closet. That hazardous like that. Now 200 amps pretty much the standard everywhere you go.
I had
Some
a-
of the big houses you got two.
maybe, well, y'all probably know this, but so it was been years ago, but a couple with a small kid looked at a house indicator, older area, the older square area.
Mhm.
And it was one with the overhead utilities, what came straight off the house, and it was super low. What's the clearance that it's supposed to be?
Minimum's 10 over the yard.
Okay, because the house was, they got probably 8-foot ceiling, so the roof line was
Yeah.
not that tall. So that
No,
was
it
a
has
concern
to
of
go
theirs.
up. Now, a lot of those on those super old houses, it can come off the side of the house like that, and you're going to see them attached to the house.
Mhm.
But yeah, that walkway, like yard to person or yard, a ground to line clearance is like 10 feet.
Okay.
minimum.
Because
And
they're
then,
like, we have a
and then when
sign.
you go over driveways, it's even more. And then over city streets, it's even more than that. So
And don't ever touch those lines.
Well, that's what their concern was. They're like, what if he had the bat or something and he's like swinging it up? He's 3, but that was,
But still,
they
yeah.
walked away from the house because of it.
Do
Well,
you call the city to have that
that's utility again.
utility?
And
You can ask them. I don't know if they're going to come in and raise it up. The only thing that would really fix that would be putting in a new weatherhead with the gooseneck that goes up
Yeah,
above the
higher
house to
above.
raise it up that
Okay.
way.
yeah, because this went straight across the yard.
And so that one would be an electrician or the utility?
Utility, I called the utility company. They never
So
called back.
electricians can put in a new weatherhead, but it's the
But they
utility
also have
company that
to-
needs to come and rewire the two
Got it.
together, right? So you get them bumped up there. But back to these panels real quick. Pushmatic, we really don't see those. They're just like look like little push button breakers. That's another one I'll call out. This one, I just put a picture of that one kind of in the middle down there. It was an old General Electric. It was in a closet, which is hazardous location. You're going to see that a ton in older houses. It was beautifully wired. Like there was, other than the fact that the guy had a schematic above it showing where every breaker went to.
Wow.
So it was so meticulously maintained. But again, I come in there and I'm like, there's no arc faults. There's no this, there's no that. There's not, just severely out of date.
Yeah.
And they're on an old 2-wire system. So the house is completely ungrounded at that point. The third one over there, that is a mid-90s breaker, which, like I said, is beautifully wired. That's usually what you see. 200 amp service. Again, no arc faults, no surge protection. The one on the far right is the most current one that we see. It's got the whole home surge protection at the top. It's got all the breaker, all the GFCIs, all the AFCIs. So that's usually what you see most of now.
So what does the A mean?
Arc fault.
Yeah.
So
I've
arcing,
had
anytime
that.
you have arcing on a line, it'll kill the breaker.
Okay.
I've had that come up so much in the past 2 years.
It's,
No
and,
arc fault?
and it's grandfathered in most
Yeah.
places.
Mhm.
So they built the house. They didn't have arc fault circuit interrupters at that time.
Mhm.
They did have ground fault circuit interrupters, more than likely in most of the houses that you're dealing with. But the arc faults usually go in the bedrooms.
Yeah.
That's usually the location of the arc faults.
So it's as built conditions, right? House built 2022 this year, you're going to have arc faults pretty much everywhere that a GFCI is not required now. Originally, it started out in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s as just being in bedrooms, right? It was only required in bedrooms. So now they've pretty much moved it. If a ground fault is not, if a GFCI is not required, an arc fault is required. So even the GFCIs have gotten to the point where they're required in laundry rooms, rooms adjacent to the kitchens, the entire kitchen. It's just,
They moved to adjacent rooms to the kitchen now too? Interesting.
yeah.
Okay.
So usually if you have a dining room, I'm starting to see them more and more.
Huh.
If you have a dining room right off.
I guess you could put an electrical cord, an extension cord and run something.
Yeah, it's,
I never
Crazy.
understood the ceiling in the garage on the garage door opener. I don't understand a GFCI there.
Well, I'm telling you, that's why they've gotten this to this point, with this, the electric, the NEC has now decided if it's not going to be arc fault protected, it's going to be GFCI protected,
Wow.
no matter what, with the exception of the refrigerator. Right? Like that's the only thing you don't have to. And every now and then I'll find one outlet in a garage custom build that's dedicated for a deep freeze that won't trip.
They won't
Okay,
trip.
so our garage already freezes on our whatever circuit that is.
Yeah.
It's the only one we can put it on really, and it trips all the time. I'm like,
Yeah, you gotta fix that, you gotta.
So you either need to change it or
We
you got
did
too much
once.
crap plugged in
Well,
inside and out.
You can, I mean, if you dedicate it, if you were to dedicate it just to your deep freeze,
yeah,
you could take it out of the circuit because it's in a series.
yes, it is.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's not parallel, it's
Yeah.
a series, if you remember high school science. But you could take that one out, leave everything else in series and dedicate one single outlet,
Yeah.
not two,
This is
single,
all one that's supposed
for, and they sell those at Home Depot and
Yeah.
dedicate that to your deep freeze
And
and
it won't
take it
trip.
off the GFCI circuit, you
Yeah.
would not have that problem.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
but your house, like I
that's so
said,
key.
chances are it's the garage and all the
It is.
exterior.
It is.
That's everything that's tied on that one
It is.
chip.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. And so
Yeah.
Ken wanted it because he has like all of his like electronic stuff, like his compressor and all that hooked up. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
I'll have to tell him about
Yeah,
but-
early 90s, in the 80s, we had the GFCIs worked the bathroom, the garage, and the exterior. So I usually tell people, hey, I put it as an FYI in my report, and I'm like, hey, don't be blow drying your hair while he's out there trying to, run the whatever, and you're gonna trip breakers
Yeah.
left and right.
Yeah.
So,
Got it.
yeah, y'all have any questions on that? Mina,
Yeah, I'm
you have any
sorry.
questions?
Nope.
No, you're good. I was just asking because Mina's on there being nice and quiet. I'm like,
She takes it all in. She takes a lot of notes over there.
oh, that's good enough. Hear you. Exterior surroundings, that's another one. Home inspectors in Texas are not required to talk about retaining walls or fences, just so y'all know. I usually talk about them, I usually point them out. Retaining wall, I actually pointed this one out because the lot was about 100 foot wide lot, and it had 3 levels of retaining wall all the way around it. And levels were about this high, and then it'd go back 3 feet, go up another level, go back, and there was
Wow.
utilities, right? Every bit of that, you see the utility box
Oh,
up in
I
that top
see.
picture.
Oh, yeah.
There was a sewer line and a house up behind that. Every bit of that was rotten.
I was just gonna ask that.
Yeah, it was pretty rotten. I pointed it out, first time buyers, we're gonna get a house, we don't have a lot of money. We're gonna do some, that kind of couple. So, and they were awesome couple, and I said, y'all might just want to have an estimate done on what it's gonna cost to replace this, because it's already starting to bow. The pictures out on this aren't that good, but there were places it was already starting to bow and come out. And I'm like, if all of that starts to come down, you got a house up there, you got utilities, so it was $127,000 estimate
Oh,
to replace that wall.
holy moly.
So,
Wow.
so there you go.
Whoa.
Sellers didn't believe it, so they got their own people and got $128,000
Wow.
to replace the wall. So needless to say, they were like, we're out.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
So-
out.
We're out.
That happened at my Hearst house. It was a brick wall because it
Mhm.
went to the main street in the neighborhood. And most times, a lot of HOAs will cover that.
Mhm.
This one doesn't have an HOA, so my seller was
Yeah.
responsible for it. But the
Okay,
buyer,
now
we
it's
had one
fine.
buyer walk because they thought it was gonna fall down. When we had a brick person out there,
Yeah.
they're like, it's stable. Yeah, it probably needs to be run, but it's
Yeah.
not deficient in any way. But they're like, but the inspector's the one that notated it. And they're like, I mean, that's not even part of the house. And I'm like, I get it, but
Well, it's, it's not. And as an inspector, no, we're not required to call it out. But again, I take my client's best interest,
Yes.
right? Like I look at everything and, if it's just one little single level, I'm going to tell them, but it's not going to say, hey, you absolutely have to have this done. You know what I mean? Like I pointed out, it's rotten.
Yeah.
Okay. You decided to buy the house. That's not that big a repair. But, see, I don't know what he was doing. Anyway, and negative grading is another big one that I see a lot of that people don't realize that'll bite them in the butt in a heartbeat. So when you have the grading that comes back into the house or slopes, hills that slopes, and there's no gutters or underground drainage or anything like that. So I had a client get mad at me the other day because he called and I pointed out I couldn't see any underground subsurface, no signs of it anywhere. I recommended they have one put in, which they did. And in digging, they found an old one. So,
Okay.
then they got mad at me because I didn't call out the old one. And because they wouldn't, I couldn't even see it, right? Like I was like, are there any signs of it anywhere? Like, if there's no signs, how am I going to see it? But anyway, it's kind of comical because they got mad and said they would have asked for that to be fixed. And I was like, whatever. But I'm like, sorry, it wasn't. I made recommendations for you to either put one in or have it serviced because that's the only 2 ways I recommend them. If I see them, I recommend you have it serviced and checked out or watch for flooding. If I don't see it, I recommend you put one in. So
Another thing to keep in mind as far as like investors, if you're working with an investor or if you have a listing and are hoping to get an investor offer, investors hate solar panels and retaining walls because they can lead to all kinds of problems. So like that $127,000 wall there, investors won't even touch that kind of stuff because they can't make any money on it.
Right.
So just keep that in your brain.
Sure.
Okay,
Okay.
next slide.
Next slide. Preparing your buyer for home inspection. Obviously, I know a lot of times if you have first time buyers, it's totally freaked out, right? They're going to get a ton of information. And that's usually what I tell everybody. It's buyers are going to get a ton of information thrown at this house that they've fallen in love with, and it's the perfect house, and we're going to put in an offer, and it's our dream home. And the inspector walks in and goes, "Here you go." Right? And they totally, so you guys settle them down. I mean, I settle them down as much as I can. I'm just saying, if you're not using us, just kind of prepare them, right? Some home inspectors are very much like safety, and you have to have this fixed, and you have to do this. I'm more of a look, it's a honey-do list, right? Like, here's your list. If there are safety issues, we can get that point across without completely freaking them out, right? But it's a lot, right? We're there to kind of tell you as much as we can about a house at that day, right? And as much as we can, and I do call out a lot of cosmetic stuff. I mean, I try to let them know, here's your honey-do. Does that mean it has to be done right then? No, right? Make a long-term plan. So just preparing them and letting them know you're going to get a lot of information. Let's not freak out. Everything's fixable.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of that.
I mean, something I always share with my clients is, and especially the age of the home or how in depth the property is, I'm like, don't freak out when we get 65 or 70 pages of an inspection.
Oh, yeah.
Don't do that. Like, don't do it. More doesn't mean more problems. It just means, maybe we have more things to evaluate, or we have things that have been grandfathered in because of the age of the
Yeah.
home or things like that. So I don't know, that always helps them that I say that. And I
That's
also describe the inspector as sort of like when you go to your family doctor
So I tell
and they
everybody.
can't, and they're like, well, that's not my specialty. What's wrong with your knee? But let's go see an orthopedic doctor. So I try to tell people, like, don't shoot
Yeah.
the home inspector because it's just,
Their
they're
job.
just evaluating a checkpoint list, and it may or may not be
Yeah.
a defect.
And that's what I have to explain to a lot of people is if I were to try to use every city code and county code, I'd be screwed, right? Like, I can remember. So I have the national standard that I go by, right? Which is ultimately who city and counties base their stuff off. IRC and NEC, right? National Electric, International Residential. So I go by the most current codes. Now, Parker County and parts of Parker County, they're building brand new houses on a 2018 code for the electric panels. And I show up out there and there's not a single arc fault. There's not a single, GFCI is missing everywhere, but guess what? That's all they require. Right?
They
Put the
don't
panel
miss
in.
Parker County.
No. So, and that's what I have to remind people is there are going to be things on here I call out, right? And a lot of it's as built. Does that mean there's anything wrong with it? No. How does that affect you when you go to put in a hot tub or the RV or the Tesla charger? Your electrician may say, you got to do this.
You're gonna have a problem.
Other than that, you guys, how many of y'all have fought with clients that they're like, I don't like that paint color. We can't buy this house. And you just want to strangle them, right? And then how I look at houses, I know it says home inspectors. You can click that.
Negative one?
Yeah, you can
Okay.
click it. That's how I look at houses. I take a lot of selfies. And it's on accident, right? Like I'm trying to, because I'll flip the camera around. And then, some of them I'm like clicking away and I was like,
Social media
I like
content.
it. I like it.
I think it's greatness. That's
they
greatness.
flooding the house the other day. That was awesome.
Uh-huh.
New build. We'll talk about that in a minute. Y'all didn't see what's that you up to today?
I
where
didn't see that
flooded
one.
the house?
I didn't see that. I was like, did you
Good
post
job.
that?
I did. Shower pan was leaking.
And you flooded the house the other day. Y'all
So-
go to the inspection ladies on
Yeah.
Facebook and you see what she's up to.
Oh my, I didn't see that one. I mean, was that last week or was that out of town? It was 2 days ago.
Couple days ago. New build, we do new build inspections from the ground up. From the time they start digging right before they pour, we do a pre-pour, we do a pre-drywall, which is when you catch stuff like this. I guess I took that slide out. No, you're good. So right here, if you can see, they cut, these are trusses. I know, Nina. I know you can't see me pointing at the screen here. Anyway, those are trusses. Those are manufactured and engineered and they come in that way. So the only person that's allowed to cut a roof truss, any kind of truss system is an engineer and the manufacturer. So to install this chimney on that left side, they went and they cut the whole wall system and the whole ceiling truss system, the roof truss. And they cut a wall out, cut this wall, cut that truss, cut that truss. They're like, that's good. We're just gonna stick it up there. Now, those are all load bearing, right? Like that's how they transfer the weight from the roof to the ground. So
What builder
What
was
builder?
it?
What builder was that?
I don't know what
This is the
building.
new build. Well, what builder was it?
I don't remember. I don't
We
remember.
won't speak.
Well, and I'm just gonna say that if you work in Parker County and you're not having inspection done on new builds,
Because
let me know.
oh no, I got something to tell you. This other picture on the right, right there is circled. That's a dryer vent. That this was an 11-month warranty inspection.
It's not going out.
Yeah, exactly.
They just went into the attic and that's what they,
That's
no
where it
filter.
stopped.
They just had the,
Yeah, they didn't.
Lint and heat.
They missed that other part going all the way out the roof.
holy crap.
The last one I did in Parker County on a new build, which actually that builder now refers me, and I've done. It's like a little 20-lot subdivision out there. Oh, that's in Pelican. Sorry,
Oh.
but it's a 20-lot subdivision, and I've done their first two that they. So the people just called me, and I go in the attic, the dryer vent, the range exhaust over the stove. They were all run right up to the roof sheathing like this and stopped. And I was like, y'all are missing something. Like, so,
Hey, there's no roof penetration.
but yeah,
It's safer for the roof.
it's safer. Let's just pull. No wonder your dryer's not gonna work.
I would think almost as being a builder, I would want an inspector to come because they work with so many subcontractors
Yeah.
in and out.
And they can't check every.
Oh, they have their inspectors.
Well,
So now this guy was at first he was being difficult, right? Like at first he's like, if your inspector comes out and says this and this and this and this, we're not fixing it. But it was because he was trying in a nice, rude way. He was trying to explain to the buyers that some of this is as built. Like we don't go by this code. We don't do that. So I guess whatever inspectors he's dealt with in the past had argued points with him, right? So I go and I do this inspection. He comes out, meets me on site. We talk about it, and I just reassure him. I'm like, I know that you have codes, right? Like if I tell you it's not up to code, as long as you can prove to them, and they ask you for it, and you give it to them and say okay, right? And I said, but I do explain that to them. So I have now done every house in that subdivision on final audit too, because he refers me, right? But he was like that. He was mortified, and I was like, they didn't cut a hole in the roof. Like they missed these two. And he's like,
Yeah.
and I said, you gonna go check that one over there for me? So anyway, yeah. So anyway, that's
I have a question about that one, that
which one?
chimney and water there.
The left?
Yes, sorry. How do they fix that? Get the engineer out there again and see how they're supposed to.
The manufacturer has to come and check that out. Because like I said, this part right here is wall, right? This is what the builder put in. It's this top part right here where you see these plates.
Uh-huh.
Those up there, that's part of your roof system. So these are the ones like this part right here and this one right here should not have been cut because that's part of the truss. So anytime you see that, we also see beams, floor joists that they put in that they're manufactured. There's certain places that they can and can't cut. Even on these wall studs, there's tons of stuff, right? They can't notch them in certain spots. They can't drill them in certain spots. On load bearing versus non-load bearing, you got to have this, and this. I mean, I usually do pre-drywall. Now, does that mean they're going to fix it? No, because they're going to run in there and try to throw the drywall up before you see it again, right? But I still hand the report and call it out. So we do a lot of those. Anyway, a couple of funnies for you. But that's about all. If y'all have questions, we can talk about it. Y'all can ask.
I
we
would
can
say on
answer.
their new builds too, y'all send the 11th-month reminder out, right?
As long as they book it when we book the new build.
Yes,
Oh.
yes.
Yeah, because we do offer a discount if people are doing new build and they go ahead and pay for the new build and their 11-month warranty inspection up front. We give them a discount, but it's on our calendars.
Okay.
And then when it comes time, me and Tanya, starts calling saying, hey, your warranty's fixing to be up. Let's get you on schedule. So we do try.
Tell them what software you use.
Oh, I didn't even pull it up. Spectora. So if you've never heard of Spectora, never seen it, if you've ever gotten a report that's got, yeah, you can probably pull it up. Blue, orange, red on it. So my reporting system, it's a web-based reporting system. Now you can print the Trek promulgated off of it if you need a paper copy. But a lot of it, when it comes in, and I color code everything, you're going to have your blues, which are minor defects, FYIs, honeydews, your simple stuff, right? Explanations on all of it. There's videos that I put in there. There's links to different stuff, articles that might help them, right? Once we get into the orange stuff, it's maintenance recommendations that I recommend that you like changing an air filter. It's going to come up orange. Just say it's recommended. A lot of my electrical stuff comes up orange, stuff like that. The red is when we really get into, you need to fix that right now, and it's a safety concern. So,
Well, actually, this is my markup. Sorry.
sorry.
That's when I was sending it to the builder. Let me find me on the original.
So with that, and the way it all formats out is like, once you get this report, it's super easy for you to read because it's in a summary form, right? And you can jump right to the red. You can really kind of jump to some of the orange stuff and discuss with your buyers, hey, what you want to see, what you don't want to see. So from those reports on that web-based, you can also do a repair request builder right there. And so you can go in when you do the repair builder and you can check what defects you want for them to fix. And you can make comments, and then you can either email it or text it, put it with your addendum and send it. That way you're not having to try to copy and paste what the inspector said
Good.
and put a picture. It's all right there. There's no argument, right? If I say this plumbing's leaking, there's a video of that plumbing leaking, right? There's not just a picture. And that way, that video, every bit of that automatically goes to the seller, to that agent, and there's no denying it,
Cool.
right?
I'll give you my next one for sure.
Yeah, you have to check out hers.
Yeah, it's pulling.
Yeah, it was like we call it the hamburger.
Yeah.
If it's the 3 lines.
The 3 lines. Yeah. That's what we call it too.
So,
It's the hamburger.
yeah.
Hamburger.
So I do,
Yeah.
I don't know if I have, on my website, I switched over a while back, and then I got super busy, so I haven't really updated fully. I may have sample reports on there.
Oh, you've been the,
But then
okay,
the-
now I know.
But then the repair builder request, I just discovered by accident because I was in there doing something, and I was like, this has been here this whole time, and I'm like, I'm such an idiot. I've let all my realtors down because I've been making their life hard.
But it is
Interesting.
on like Amy Up to Today on Facebook.
Oh, yeah, I did
Yeah,
post a video of that. showing
Do
it.
you ever see, if you see mold somewhere, do you call that out?
I cannot say
Mold. What is it?
Organic.
organic growth.
I was like, what is it called? Organic growth.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I see it, I call it out, but I can't call it no, right? I have to tell you to have it tested.
So there are.
'Cause you don't know if it is mold.
Exactly. I mean, it is a form of mold, right? Like
There's something black on the
something
wood.
black on the wood is a form of mold, but it's like, whether is it a mildew, is it toxic? We don't know, right?
If you need someone
Um,
that does that, just let us know.
Yeah, we'll
Um,
find somebody.
John Wells has his license to do that.
Yeah,
Because I
we do
do
know an
have-
inspector that does mold testing.
So I have a buyer right now, so she's gonna have to move out of her house because the baby,
Mhm.
which is 4 years old, he has mold toxicity.
Yeah.
Toxicity, yes.
Yeah.
And the doctor told her, you have to move out of your house. They've remediated the whole HVAC system and everything, but she says no. it's
They
the
got it
house,
somewhere
it's
else.
just the house.
It's
So-
probably in laws somewhere.
Yeah,
at that
that's what
point.
she
Yeah,
said.
but isn't
I had a-
that what's wrong with Cassie's?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had one in South Dallas that I did, and I spent 4 hours in this house, and it was one of those split level kind of things that he's talking about. And up on that 3rd level, they had a shower that was, the shower pan was leaking, but it was going right down the wall chase all the way down into this basement, and into this crawl space, right? So I walk in the crawl space 3 levels down, and I got water
Yeah.
coming down the wall, and no telling how long it's been doing that.
Right.
So I spent 4 hours in that house, and I came out of there. I had the worst raw drainage, with sore throat, the worst headache.
Mhm.
And at first, I was like, "Oh, it's allergies," No, that next day I was cleared up, and before I went in the house, I wasn't having any problems, and I was like, it's got to be mold.
Yeah.
Right, and I normally don't tell a buyer to run from a house, but this one, because she called me the next day to talk about the report, and I said, look, I'm gonna tell you how I felt.
Yeah.
I said, I strongly suggest you get air quality done.
Can a new house, a new build be tested for that as well?
Air quality testing?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah, we can do
I will
that.
say, I had a DR Horton house last summer when we were getting all that rain. Everything was fine. We were there like for the walkthrough. Day after they went there for something and there was mold all in like the pantry area. And it was just because the moisture got in there.
And probably not.
So they had to go and cut all the sheetrock and then redo. And this was like days before it was my
Yeah.
crazy guy. Remember?
Yeah.
Yeah, some builders, right? I was down at one, I don't remember where they were at. The guy was actually doing the efficiency testing on the house. So some builders
I
actually
have
have
a-
them come
I
in
have
and do energy efficiency testing and air, change testing, air quality and stuff like that.
I have a question for you because it doesn't come up often like out towards the west, but like if you work in Arlington, HEB area, whatever, every once in a while the PSI issue comes up, which
For what, water?
Water.
yes, which, if you don't know how to handle it, the other agents go buck wild and, we need to like burn the house down because of it. And then I'm like, okay.
So-
There's only been one time I've ever had to have a seller install something to regulate the PSI, which
Yeah,
I mean, I thought, I'm kind of like, okay, so like the way I combat it is when I get one of those, I call the water entity and have them go out and check it a couple of different times a day to get normal ranges.
mm-hmm.
But I mean, do you deal with that much?
I see it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I see it a lot. I can tell you out of the words of several plumbers I've talked to, they're like,
Yeah.
if it's under 90, we're not touching it.
Yeah.
We're leaving it because we call it out over 80.
Right, 40 to 80, right?
Yeah, 40 to 80.
Yeah.
So this plumber, he's like, it's under 90, I'm not touching it. Now, I have had some that I walked in and I had one that was 120 and I turned the shower on full blast and it blew the face of the shower head
Oh,
off.
was that in?
So-
Parker County.
It was out in the country. I was way out there and I was like, wow, this is
Well,
awful out of water pressure for this, right? Oh, that was done in Godly. I mean, it just completely.
I might move down there just for the water pressure.
It's a brand new building. It was nice, and I turned it, and I've got a video of it somewhere. I don't know what I'd do with that video, but I was making a video because right there where they screw it on, it was leaking, and so I've got this video, and it's like a few seconds. It's not even a few seconds, and all of a sudden the thing blows off, and I jump right, like completely.
No wonder it was leaking. If you're pushing that much pressure trying to do a little bitty hole, it's like feeding back everywhere.
They done shot me up in there. I don't even know. I run across all kinds of crazy stuff. It's fun. I like that idea. So yeah, go look at it. Yeah, I had
Well, I have the video pulled up at the you flooding house on my Facebook, so don't forget
my
to watch
flipper's
it.
delight.
It was the shower pan that was.
It was. So they tried to put one of those, you see the shower drains now where it doesn't look like a drain, right? Like it's the fancy little square and it's got a little line around it where it goes under and drains. So I guess so I guess they had
Okay.
tried, it's drained, but doesn't look like drain. So they had tried to do that. And when I first turned it on, it was draining. So I was like, okay, cool. So I went ahead and I've got this little rubber thing that I put over it. It's about, it's about that tall, and the water can drain once it goes over without flooding outside of the shower. So I come back in and this whole thing is completely full, right? It's still all in the pan. But at that point, I was like, I got water coming, like it's starting to come out. And I was like, oh, this isn't good, right? And then the shower pan had crack in it, right, in the mortar. So that's my first thing, right? So I go ahead and I pull the stopper thinking, okay, we're just going to go ahead and drain out. This thing's not draining. Like it had stopped draining on me. And I've got this crack. So by the time it's done, I don't know how many gallons of water have now flooded this bathroom, the primary bedroom, the carpet's soaked, the closet on the middle bedroom is soaked. And it's, brand new carpet. And I was like,
She's calling the selling
I
agent.
did. I called the listing agent and I was like, I'm just giving you a heads up, a courtesy call that your shower pan is leaking. and no longer draining, and the carpet's wet. And she was like, "Where was this at?" And I said, "The primary shower." And she's like, "Oh, okay." And then all of a sudden she's like, "I'm gonna let you go."
This was a new build?
No, it was a
Oh, okay.
flip.
Oh,
Yeah, so I have to tell them
Yeah.
about Flipper's Delights.
My son, that was a flipper's delight right there.
Yeah, you gotta go at that point. I gotta call somebody else.
I got because I'm like, I think all the water's pretty much gone out of the pan now, but
Yeah, the carpet's all, yeah.
we completely, my buyer's standing, he's like, "What is that?" I'm like, "You have to rip that out, fix it." He's like, "My house is safe."
Yep.
And Jane, you
Gotta
gotta
get underneath it.
that was my most recent one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we can't thank you enough. What
Thank you,
great
guys.
information. I actually would like to have you guys back maybe in the fall and do something else that we can talk about. Because in the fall, we'll have, it's summertime. This-
Oh, no, it's all good.
But in the fall, and we usually have a little bit more participation where there's like 15 people at least. So I'd like you to come back and you don't do the same presentation, but it would also be a great opportunity for the conversation, which is almost as valuable as
for
what
sure.
you're presenting.
Well, and y'all can always have people come up with questions.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
There are plenty of them.
We have a new build.
Well, we can say,
presentation
yeah, I've got a
Okay.
new build presentation I can do,
Yeah.
or, talk about things that we look at
And I
pre-board.
think a good
draw
fun
level.
class to put together for fall is just sort of a buyer's consultation class, which we could include them in, from like getting the phone call to like getting to the closing table and all the steps in between.
That's kind of what 100 Days to Greatness does, though.
Oh, okay, well, I will just be quiet. about it.
Those were your ideas.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I didn't know that's what that was.
Yeah.
Of course, I didn't do that one.
well, she does, this is awesome.
I know.
Better, right?
Okay, he's known me
Well, I'm
about
just
as
saying.
long as he's known me.
I'm just saying.
Renee gave-
Excuse me just a second. Mina, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the video so we can put it on YouTube, and then we'll talk to you later, okay?
Yeah, and they'll have our information for you, Mina.
So I bought myself this high speaker because it sounds